if you remember this or not. Some of you might, more so than others. Some of you follow the kind of what's happening on the internet more than others. But a few years ago, there was this wild discussion, this debate. Really, it turned into a really contentious argument that broke out on the internet. And it wasn't like having to do with some of the usual things that we get all spun up about, but it was much, much more important. This debate, this wild debate that occurred on the internet was about the color of a dress. Do you remember this? A few years ago, right? There was a picture of this dress that don't put it up yet. It was this picture of this dress that circulated. And even though people were looking at the same picture at the time, they were like, how can two people see the same picture and think that it's two different colors? And so there was this raging debate going on. And one group said, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can look at that picture and think that it's not such and such color. And some people saw this dress as black and blue. The other people saw the dress as white and gold. And those are two very different things, aren't they? Like, how can you have differences of opinions on something that's so starkly different? And there were people that were arguing with each other, and there were identical twins who were arguing and didn't speak because they didn't see it the same way. And so I want to show you a picture, 3 pictures of this dress. So go ahead and put that up. Some of you remember this, all right? And so some people saw the dress and they thought that it was white and gold. Other people looked at the dress and they thought, no, it's not white and gold, it's black and blue. And again, how do you have the same, but at the time there was only the one picture of it going around, and it was the first one. How can you look at that picture and not see it clearly? Clearly it's white and gold, right? I mean, isn't that white and gold? Okay, let's be civil here, all right? We don't want to repeat this, all right? But it was amazing, and there is a right answer, and amazingly enough, the right answer is that the dress is really blue and black in real life. And so I tried to get, after this all occurred, there were different pictures of it. Same picture, but you can see it looks a little bit different based on, I don't know what, lighting or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that when that first picture was up, and it clearly looks white and gold, there were people that looked at that picture and said, no, it's black. It's black and blue. And like, how can you see the same thing? Well, there was a big debate over it. And the basic thing is it's a matter of one word, and that's the word perspective. Your perspective shapes what we look at. When we look at things from different perspectives, it shapes how we think about things. We might not even know that we're doing it, but subconsciously we're making assumptions about light, about camera angles, about all kinds of different things to shape our perspective. And in real life, you know as well as I do that one of the most important things that determines your life is like how you view it, what your perspective is. Some people can look at one set of circumstances and they can say one thing, and another person can look at the very same set of circumstances, and they can have a totally different opinion. And so, what is your perspective? And we can do this with anything. Like, we can look at headlines in the news, but depending on your perspective, what you see or hear might be different. We can look at financial news or financial uncertainty, and depending on our perspective, depending on our own financial situation or what's going on in our life, we may see the exact same set of circumstances or the same news different ways. And it can happen anywhere. You can look at some challenges maybe in your home or maybe some stress in your marriage or tension in your family. And depending on your circumstance and your perspective, it kind of changes how you view those things. And we're going to look at that this morning. We're going to look at how our perspective needs to be shaped by what God tells us. And we're going to be starting this series on Joshua called Strong and Courageous. And we're going to look at some defining moments of Joshua and how his perspective was filled with hope and how it was filled with faith and how it allowed him to find strength and courage when he was facing some really, really difficult circumstances. And so in Numbers 13 and 14, maybe you know the story. By this time, the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, the Israelites, they've been in slavery in Egypt, and now they're being set free from Egypt. And they'd spent 400 years plus as slaves in Egypt, and they prayed generation after generation that God would deliver them. And they had a front row seat to see the power of God demonstrated. as Moses is sent and the 10 plagues come and finally Pharaoh says, all right, just go, get out of here. I don't want you in my country anymore. And so they begin, the children of God, their journey into the desert. Then all of a sudden Pharaoh, right, he has a change of heart and he starts to rethink this. Letting all of his free slave labor out the door. And so Pharaoh gathers his army, the Egyptian army, and he chases after them and he catches them. And he catches the Israelites, he catches up to them, and the Israelites are in front of the Red Sea, and it seems that they're trapped. It seems that there's no way for them to get out of that situation. They got the Red Sea and the Egyptian army, and what are they gonna do? There's nowhere for them to go. But Moses said to the people, the Lord your God, he will fight for you today. If somebody said that to me, who was somebody who knew, like Moses knew, and said, hey, the Lord your God, he's going to fight for you today. He's going to fight that battle, whatever it might be. Man, I don't know. I would do anything. I would just do anything. And so if Moses says, hey, the Lord your God is going to fight for you today, and then the people watch again, another mighty act of God as God splits the Red Sea, and then they walk through that on dry land. The Egyptian army comes after them. And the sea collapses on them, and that's how God protected them. And they were eyewitnesses to this. They were there. So then they journey through the desert after they get over the Red Sea a little bit more. And that's where we meet them in Numbers 13 and 14, where they're standing now right on the border of Canaan, the promised land. The place that God had promised to the Israelites since going all the way back to Abraham. And now they were almost there. Generations had come and gone. And they'd heard these promises about God is going to lead us to some great promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now this generation of Israelites, they are actually there. And they're about ready to take possession of this long anticipated moment. And in Numbers chapter 13, verse 1, it says, The Lord said to Moses, now send some men, one from each of the 12 tribes, and select one from each tribe as leader. Send these men to explore the land of Canaan. And it says, which I am giving, right, to the Israelites. Which I am giving to the Israelites. And so what's this land called again? It's called the Promised Land, right? It's called the Promised Land. Send some of these men into the Promised Land. It doesn't say, hey, send some men into I'm contemplating this land, or I'm considering giving them this land, or we'll see land, or let me talk to me about it later land, or the maybe land, or the probably land. What is it? It's the promised land. God says, once again, this is the land I am giving to them. I'm doing it. It's already been decided, already been determined, but I want you to send some men in there to explore the land that I've already made this decision about, that I'm already going to give it to them. And yet what we find out is that they go to this land, these 12 people, and they have some different perspectives and a little bit different mentality. But yet God didn't ask them to go decide. He didn't say, hey guys, 12 guys, hey, come here, huddle up. I want you to go into this land, and I want you to bring me back a report. I want you to do some surveillance and see what's going on, see how big the people are, how big their army is, whatever, and then come back to me, and then I'll take all that into consideration, and then I'll make my decision then. Now, God's already decided this. It's been decided long ago. He said, I want you to go into that land, and I want you to look at it and observe it. Now, there was a reason, I think, that God, even though God was already going to give it to him, I think he wanted them to see it for themselves, that it was everything that he said. Everything that he said it was going to be. But sometimes this is a challenge for us, again, depending on our perspective, because sometimes we let what we don't think is possible get in the way of what God has promised. And we do that all the time. And we sometimes start thinking that we're the one who decides what is possible for God. Like, God, I know in theory you can do everything, but this thing that's going on in my life, I don't think you can handle that. Now, we need to make sure at this point that we're very clear that what God promises and what he doesn't promise. That's kind of another sermon series. But God doesn't promise to give us every single thing that we want. But when he does promise us something, like he had promised this land to the Israelites, do not let they shouldn't let their opinion of what he's able to do negate what he had already promised to do. So Moses, he tells the spies what to look for when they get into the land. And he tells them to look for the fruit. Look for the fruit. The fruit is what's good. The fruit is the evidence of what God has already said. And so these 12 spies go in. And then he says in verse 25, he says, at the end of the 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. So for 40 days, the people have been waiting. Like they've been waiting for this report. And my hunch is that during those 40 days, their anxiety levels had risen all out of whack. And like they were so concerned about what they might hear. 40 days goes by, the 12 men come back and they give a report to all the people. And this is where we see that just because people might be looking at the exact same thing, their perspective is totally, totally different. Verse 27 says that the 10 of the 12 spies give a negative report. They come back and they say, well, we went into the land which you sent us into, and it does. Just like God said, it does flow with milk and honey. It's beautiful, it's bountiful, and here's the fruit. And you told us to look for the fruit, and so we brought some fruit back, and here's the fruit. But then there's a word. There's a word that we have to pay attention to because a lot hinges on this word. You told us to get the fruit, we brought some fruit back, and here it is, but. Maybe in your Bibles it's translated, nevertheless. But I know what God has said. I know what we've seen, but Moses, man, the people who are living there are powerful. The cities are fortified like nothing we've ever seen, and they're large. They're very large, these people. They're the descendants of Anak. They're giants. And the Amalekites, they live in the Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites, they all live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. This land is totally occupied by people who have no interest in us taking this land over. It's occupied. So that's 10 of them. And then Caleb is about, like, I don't know, late 70s, 80, early 80s maybe at this point. And so you got these 10 spies giving this negative report, but 2 of the spies, Caleb and Joshua, they have a different perspective. Like they see it totally, totally differently, right? It's white and gold. No, it's black and blue. No, it's white and gold. No, it's black and blue. Like they have a totally different perspective on this. And so Caleb says that Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of that land, for certainly we can do it. Certainly we can do it. And they see the same things, these 10 spies. The reality is really the same, but it's determined by their reaction, by their perspective. 10 of them say, we can't do it, it's too much, the people are too big. 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, they're like, we can do that. We can do that. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. But after all, God already told us it was ours, so we just have to go take it. Again, remember, God had promised that to them. God doesn't promise us that we can have whatever we want, but in the promises that God does make to us, and there are many of them, He is faithful to keep those promises. But it all depends on, right, your perspective. Had a lesson in this, I don't know, several summers ago. Went to Cedar Point, and our daughter Becca, I don't know at the time, she was, 10, 11, I don't know. I don't even know how she is now. I lost track. But she was young, a lot younger back then. And she had never been on a roller coaster. And Lori and I, at the time, however many years ago, we loved roller coasters. And so we kind of coerced her to get on this one. I don't remember which one it was. But as far as roller coasters go, it was fairly tame. And she was sitting in the back of me. And every once in a while, I could kind of turn my head and I could see it. And it looked like she was smiling. I'm not sure. She may have been trying to keep from throwing up. I don't know. But it looked like she was enjoying it. And it was a great roller coaster. When we got off of it, we're all there's several of us, and we're walking off of it. And we're like, man, that was really fun. Let's do that again. And we look back and we say to Becca, what did you think? And she said, okay, that was the most horrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like, oh, how could you say that? It was so much fun. 2 different perspectives. Verse 31 says, so the men, the 10 with the negative report, who had gone up with Joshua and Caleb, they said, we can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are. And then that says that they spread among the Israelites a bad report. A bad report. They started spreading this news about the land that they had explored and got everybody else convinced that there's no way that they can do that. That people are giants, the cities are well fortified, there's no way we can do this. Verse 33, I love this, says, we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. That's how small we felt compared to these giants. And so in verse 1 of chapter 14, it says, then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. They cried all night. They began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. So you got God and Caleb and Joshua and God over here saying, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Then you get these 10 putzes over here saying, no, we can't do it. People are too big and whatever. I'm like, who do the people believe? They're crying all night. Verse 2, it says, their voices rose in a great chorus of protest, and they begin to protest against Moses and Aaron. And now here they go back to the same old song and dance. If only we had stayed in Egypt, even if only we had died in Egypt or even in the wilderness, would have been better than going in there and getting slaughtered by these giants. And so they listen to this negative report. They start complaining because of their perspective. Well, Joshua and Caleb, they come in. They recognize what's happening, and they try to give people a different understanding, a different perspective of the thing. And so here's what we read in verse 7. It says that they said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. And it is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord. That's what they were talking about. God said, I want you to go take that. They said, we don't think we can do it. They're rebelling against the Lord. But he said, don't be afraid of the people of the land. And then I love what Joshua and Caleb said. They said, they are only helpless prey to us. You see the perspective there. Like one group says, we're just like little ants compared to them. And Joshua and Caleb, they're just helpless prey against us. We've got the God of the universe on our side, right? And we can do this. And so then they go on to say, well, they don't have any protection, but the Lord is with us. And if the Lord is with us, we don't need to be afraid of them. And like, do you remember, people, everything that God has done for us? People, do you remember how God got us out of Egypt and how he got us across the Red Sea and everything that he's done? He's provided food for us all these years. And like, do you remember all of this stuff? We've seen this with our own eyes. We've experienced it. We have seen time and time again his power at work. We've seen the great lengths that he goes to. This is nothing for him. This is nothing for him. If the Lord is with us, then who can be against us? And they're just like prey to us. And so you've got these 12 people. They see different things. They're looking at the same situation, different perspective, different stories, different mindsets. And sometimes we need to remember that. I think we sometimes think that there's only one way of looking at situations that come upon us in life. So I want us to kind of consider 3 questions to ask ourselves at various times when we come up against our own Red Sea or whatever it might be, and we just don't know, like we're just afraid. The problem is so big, we seem so small. God, for whatever reason, seems like he's not around us anymore or he's distant. 3 things that I think we need to ask ourselves. And one of the things that I love about the book of Joshua is obviously the series is called Strong and Courageous, because many times God tells them to be strong and courageous. And then a couple of times he'll say, be strong and very courageous. So 3 questions that we can ask ourselves that I hope will help us to be very courageous when we come upon things that we're a little bit afraid of. So here's the first question. First question is, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? Not what am I looking at, but what am I looking for? Because what you look for is usually what you'll find. What you look for has a way of shaping your perspective. Now, this is another way to put it is the classic, glass half full, glass half empty debate. Some people see it half full, some people see it half empty. But truly, what we are looking for is much more important than what we are looking at. So as an example, the 12 spies, they're told to go look for fruit, right? And fruit is what's good. Fruit is the evidence that God can be trusted. Fruit is the evidence that God keeps his promises. Guys, go into that land and look for the fruit. So the question is that what we're looking for? Are we looking for what's good? Are we looking for the fruit, or are we focused on the frustrations? Because if we focus on frustrations, let me tell you, we are going to find them. We're going to find them. Or are we looking for opportunities? Are we looking for opportunities, or are we only looking at the obstacles? Are we looking for the beauty and the blessing and the opportunities, or are we only looking at the obstacles? What are we looking for? Simon, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, Simon Sinek. He's a leadership expert, writes all these books that we're told as ministers, you better read every one of them or else you're not going to know what you're doing, and I don't go in for that. But I love one story that he told. He was talking about walking in the park with a friend of his, or rather they were going on a run. And he saw this table set up in the park where somebody was giving away free bagels. He hadn't eaten any breakfast. He was hungry, didn't have any money on him. And so he's like, free bagels, that's perfect. So he said to his running partner, his friend, he said, hey, let's go over there and get a free bagel. Well, the buddy, he looked at something different. He looked at the line for the free bagels, and he sized up the situation immediately. He says, I don't want to wait in a line. Well, Simon Sinek, he said, I never really noticed that line. I was just looking at the free bagels, right? And kind of to put it simply, in this world, you can look for the free bagel, or you can look at the line. Two different perspectives, each looking at something different or for something different. And so what I need to constantly do for myself, and maybe you all hopefully are better at this than I am, but I just really need to ask myself, because I tend to look at obstacles, but I need to ask myself, am I, in this season of my life, am I looking for the free bagel, or am I looking at the line? Like, what is my main orientation? What is my perspective? Because one of them, you're looking through the lens of fear. And another one of them, you're looking through the lens of promise. And I want you to think of the lens of fear as kind of being a sort of a close-up sort of lens. The lens of fear causes us to have tunnel vision, to focus only on that obstacle, right? To only see what's in front of us, to see what only seems bigger than you do. Have you ever looked at a bug through a close-up microscope, like a fly? You have, right? I mean, like, those are scary-looking things. They really are. Like, they got these weird eyes, and like, I don't know. If you look at something like close up, it's going to look scarier than if you keep a wide distance. I was interested several years ago. I was reading an article. And it was written by either an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, I don't know which, but an eye guy in New York City. And he was writing this article about how he and some of his colleagues in the city there had noticed that so many people were coming in with a particular problem of, I don't remember if it's nearsighted or farsighted, I get them mixed up, but they could only see things right in front of them. What is that? That's farsighted? Yeah, like you don't even know, right? Like, so they could only focus on things up close. They couldn't see, like their distance vision was horrible. And they're like, what's going on? And eventually it occurred to them that in these so many cases, when you live in a city like that, you don't get the chance to exercise your distance vision because there's tall buildings and you're always looking right in front of you. I thought, man, that is like, there's a lot of truth to that. So many of us, myself, probably more so than any of my friends, we tend to just look at things like close up. Like how big is the building? How close is it? How big is the obstacle? How long is the line? And we don't keep what I would call, with a faith perspective, a wide angle lens that keeps everything in perspective. The lens of fear has a hard time keeping things in perspective. But then we shift that lens to a wide angle lens. We can see that, you know what, there's a lot of things going on in here. And we can intentionally look for the fruit. And we can see God at work. And we can remember what he's done in our life and what he will continue to do. But man, if we're just focused close up, So much of what we focus on is important. So what are we looking for? I love this. I feel like I quote this verse almost every week, but I just love it so much. In Philippians 4:8, Paul says, hey, here's what I want you to look at. Here's what I want you to focus on. And he says, focus your thoughts on whatever is true or right or pure or lovely or admirable. He says, if anything, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, focus on those things. Think about those things. I think that's good advice. I think we have a really hard time doing that, especially maybe in this season of life that we're all going through. But if we look for those things, the things that are true and right and beautiful and courageous and trustworthy and praiseworthy, we need to see more of those things. Then we're going to begin to grow our faith, I believe. If nothing else, this past couple of years, I think, has been a struggle for all of us to keep a proper perspective. We've been so focused on everything that's close up right around us in our own situation and in our own house and all this stuff, our own health. And I'm not faulting any of that. But what I'm saying is that we have all grown a little nearsighted or farsighted or whichever it might be. You know what I'm talking about, right? That we need to remember that God is still God. This gets drilled home to me so many times. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. But you are in your house or wherever you might be, and you're just kind of like you're feeling down, right? I mean, things just got you down, and maybe turn on the news, and this many people are dying, and this and that and the other thing, and you start feeling down. Then your focus starts to shift on your own problems, and not that they're insignificant, but we focus too much on ourselves through that narrow lens, right? And then something happens that just automatically widens your perspective. This happened for me the other day. Mark mentioned one a couple, was it last week or the week before? But I remember I was kind of in that mode, getting a little bit too focused on myself. And about that time, I flipped on the TV, and immediately I'm seeing videos of the hurricane, videos of Haiti, the earthquake, videos of remembering 9/11. And all of a sudden, your perspective shifts, and you see that, like, maybe it's not all just about me and my own things, and not that we're happy that any of that stuff is happening. But you know what? Compared to what so many people are going through in this life, my fruit's pretty good. Like, my concerns are not that great. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what am I looking for? The second one is, who do you listen to? Who do you listen to? Listen, who you listen to has a way of shaping your perspective and determining what you see. Like, you know that as well as I do. That's why the Bible talks so much about make sure you choose the right friends. You know, bad company corrupts, or bad character corrupts bad company. We can't allow ourselves to be around people that will constantly feed our minds full of bad news. And this happens all the time, though. I did a series, a couple years ago, called Flip the Script. And the main point of that series was to understand how Satan, the enemy of our souls, the one who's prowling around like a roaring lion seeking to devour us, how he wants to fill our minds with constant bad things. Bad reports about ourselves, bad reports about others. And so in this story, these 12 spies come back. 10 of them give a report. It's very, very negative, very, very fear-based. 2 of them give a report that's optimistic, that's faith-based, based on what God has promised, based on who God is and his reality. And so you got these 2 who are positive. You got 10 who are negative. And again, like, who do you listen to? There's a lot at stake. Probably should have mentioned this if you don't know. There are about 3 million Israelites at this time. And they've got to decide, who am I going to listen to? Going to listen to the 2, or am I going to listen to the 10? And I was thinking, you know, like 2 to 10. That ratio seems about right. Like, I haven't done a study myself. I haven't seen official studies done, but that feels about right. Like, if you just read through the headlines or whatever it might be, it looks like that, you know what, it looks like that there are basically 2 positive things for every 10 negative things. Satan specializes in filling our minds with the negative stuff. Some of you know this as well as I do. Who are we listening to? Are we listening to the Spirit of God and the Word of God, which assures us how God feels about us? Or do we listen to the enemy of our souls or other people who, though they might be well-intentioned, are telling us things that are just making us feel worse? And there are people who will tell us things all the time to make us worse. The Israelites, 3 million of them, decide to listen to the 10, and as a result, they wander in the wilderness for the next 38 or 40 years. And as a result, it says that God waits for that unbelieving generation to die off. Can you imagine that? Like they had been hearing these stories and these promises of God that have gone back generations. They've been hearing them for their entire life. They trudge through the desert. They see everything that God is doing, and yet they don't trust God to take possession of the land. And God says, okay, well, I'm gonna just have to wait a little bit longer. Like, sorry, those of you that believe, but there's some here, like they need to go, and then we'll go. And so God waits for that unbelieving generation to die off. It's an amazing thing. Only 2 people from that generation who go into the promised land some 40 years later would be Caleb and Joshua, because they were looking at things differently through the lens of faith. I had heard a song called Chainbreaker, and so many people said to me, Chris, that song's so awesome. You got to listen to that song. It's so great. And I listened to the song, and yeah, it's a good song. Like, it's true, but I don't know. It sounded to me at the time like just a kind of a cliche worship song that we sing, that, yeah, we know it's true, whatever. But then I saw a particular video of it. And when I saw this video of it, all of a sudden my perspective changed, and it clicked. It clicked what this song was all about. And I'm glad that nobody was around, because I was just bawling. And there's just something about those words in that context, in that perspective, because they weren't just words to those people. Can you imagine the things that go through the minds of people who are incarcerated, and the things that have been told them, and how maybe they've been told for so long that nobody loves them, that they're not worth anything. And then all of a sudden they hear about a God who does love them, a promise keeper, a light in the darkness. And eventually what they listen to changes their perspective, changes what they see. They're still there, but inwardly they're new. The third question I want to finish up with is, what words do you speak? What words do you speak? And especially, what words do you speak to yourself? So we read in this section of Scripture that the crowd, they listened to these negative reports, and then they began to criticize and complain and blame. And the more that we do that, the more we find reason or cause to criticize and complain and blame, the words that we speak, the words that come out of our mouth, are going to be all that more powerful. The Bible puts it like this. It says, the words have power of life and death. Not just the words you say, but the word to others, but the words you say to yourself. Somebody has said this, and I love this. Somebody said, words create worlds. And like they really, really do. So this is very similar to the last one, but here we're talking about what words do we speak to others? Not just what do we listen to, but what do we speak to others? They said, man, they're giants. Hey, y'all people, they're giants over there. Trust us. So like, you don't want to be anywhere around them. Purposely trying to sow dissension and division, when that's not really how they were. Words create worlds. What words do we speak to ourselves? What words do we speak to others? I remember the first time I was in a drama. I was in a play in school, and I was a sophomore in high school, and I got chosen to play the lead a little bit later because the guy before me chickened out. And so they came to me about 3 weeks before the play and said, hey, Chris, we want you to play the lead. I went from a small character with 19 lines to the lead in this thing. And I'd never been on stage in a play, and I was just nervous. I was petrified. I learned all the lines. In the middle of it, I got sick. I was out for about 2 weeks of that, and I didn't get to go to the rehearsals. But I learned my lines. It's the opening night, and I'm backstage, and our drama director comes up to me, and she says, Chris, are you ready? Are you ready? And I said, she says, are you nervous? I'm like, Can you ask me a stupider question, Mrs. Price? Like, am I nervous? I said, yeah, I'm nervous. She says, well, is your heart beating fast? I said, yeah. Is it pounding? Are you getting sweaty palms? I'm like, well, I wasn't, but now that you mention it, yeah, my palms are sweating, and is your mouth dry? And I said, yeah, my mouth is dry. She says, well, when I'm nervous, like, I don't know how you deal with stress, but when I'm nervous, a lot of things happen, but the main thing is that I get a dry mouth. That's why I'm always up here with water, because y'all make me nervous. And so my mouth was so dry. She said, okay, listen, Chris, I want you to change perspective. I want you to think, well, I'm not nervous. I want you to think, well, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. She says, that's what I want you to tell yourself. You're excited. I'm like, are you sure? Because I really feel like I'm nervous. No, you're excited. You're excited. And so that's what I did. I told myself I was excited, and I went out, and the thing went well, and whatever. But that was a lesson to me. Because here's the deal and why I tell you this. Very often they can feel the same. Like doing something in faith for God, you sometimes feel nervous, but sometimes it feels like excitement. And so the point is, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on how nervous I am, how my palms are sweaty, my mouth is dry, I can't think what I'm going to say? Or do we focus on, hey, I'm excited to have this opportunity, or whatever it might be? It's all a matter of perspective. And for Joshua and Caleb, they knew that there were giants in the land. They knew that the walls were heavy. They knew that the walls were fortified. That was all true. But what were they going to see? What were they going to say? And who were they going to listen to? Were they going to look at the situation through the narrow lens of fear, or through the wide-angle panoramic lens of what God had told them and promised to them and had shown them all of those years? And so this morning, what are you looking for in whatever situation you might be encountering? What are you looking for? So importantly, who are you listening to? Who are you listening to? I'm glad that you're here at church. This is about an hour out of your week. Hopefully you read your Bibles. Maybe that's another couple hours a week. That's not very much time compared to every other thing that you're listening to during the week, right? Who are you listening to, and what things are you saying? What words are you speaking to others? Are you building them up in their faith, or are you tearing them down? Or are you internally doing self-talk and speaking negative, destructive things to you? See, that's why I think that video is so powerful. Because for so many years, and I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be there, I'm sure they did, but you can see by the expressions on their face when they were singing that song, that wasn't some stale, cliche religious song. That was life. That was breath. That was freedom, even in the context of that prison. And see, these three questions are so important because they can bring us freedom. Also, and so as God told Joshua, be courageous, be strong, be very strong and courageous.